So we are 16 weeks into this journey through the world religions, and tonight, I know, so if you have heard anything about which one we're going to talk about tonight, you're not allowed to guess. But I have some clues of famous adherents to this particular religious faith as we go through and see if you know what it is based on these people. First, we have Kirstie Alley, actress Kirstie Alley. So, what do you think?
Scientology.
I know.
Yeah, you're not allowed to answer, Denise. Yes, it is Scientology. That is correct.
My first thought was Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Oh, that's coming. We got, who is this? Oh, this is Lisa Marie Presley.
Yeah, she's big.
Leah Remini. She is no longer a Scientologist. She has left the faith and actually did I think this is an award show that her program won, where she was talking about all of the bad stuff of Scientology. Tom Cruise, like Mom said, and the other famous male, good old staying alive man himself, John Travolta. These are all, except for Leah Remini, who no longer is part of it, rather famous people who subscribe to Scientology. It's an interesting, very interesting faith. We call it, it's hard to call it a religion.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, when you hear, the word Scientology, what do you hear in the name? Is science, and it purports to be a scientific approach to stuff. I'll just say stuff because we'll get into the stuff as we go. The key figure, the founder of Scientology, is a guy by the name of L. Ron Hubbard. That's his face right there. Born in the early 1900s, died just the late 1900s. He is the founder of Scientology. A fascinating life, but he's hard to figure out. A lot of times we've talked about some faiths. We've said when we look at the experiences of the founder, a lot of times we see the motivations that kind of come out in the faith that they throw out there. L. Ron Hubbard is hard to figure for a couple of reasons. One reason, he's a prolific writer. He's written a lot, including, I don't know if he wrote it or sat down for a biography that was basically fiction. He has a biography or autobiography of himself that is completely made up. He was born, I forget where did I think I wrote that down. Nope, I did not write it down. He was born, I think, in the East. He ended up out West. He tells tales of being able to read and write at 3 years old, and of having all these adventures apart from his family, because he was I don't know what you call it, free roaming child who went with this people and those people and was on ships and astounding everybody with his incredible intellect, even at 10 or 12 years old. Turns out all of that is just so much bunk. It's not true at all. He did move around a lot. His father was in the military. And so one of the reasons they moved out West is because that's where his father was stationed, out in the Pacific Northwest. His father was stationed in Guam for a while. He stayed in the Pacific Northwest with some family. Father wanted him to go into the military, was adamant that he go to the Naval Academy. He was not accepted, did not have the grades or any of that sort of thing to make it. Father pulled some strings, got him in kind of I don't know what you call it, like finishing school, a private school that was specifically geared to getting people in the Naval Academy. Graduated from there, still didn't get in. So the academy, finally went into the service and went around and was basically, toward the end of his tour of duty, he was mostly in the hospital with, depending on who you believe, a bunch of fictional ailments. It was almost like he wasn't quite like Jamie Farr from MASH, the psych ward, trying to get the discharge for being crazy. But they never really found the physical ailments they complained of, but he got a lot of kind of counseling in that thing. So the best I can tell that his life explains of this religion is he has a very active imagination. He's a very prolific writer. And those kind of seeds built up in him, and he just spills them out. So he's the founder. He's the one that kind of the main book you may have heard of is Dianetics, the science of mind or something like that. That was sort of the founding book in many ways of Scientology, and this Dianetics is thought to be a system that helps you free your mind, to use the Matrix language. In some ways, it's a little matrixy. Yeah, it's a lot matrixy, actually, when we think about it. So that's who it is. Now, we used to talk about ultimate concern or God. We use that definition because not all religions that purport to be religions name a deity, but there's something out there that they hold to. For Scientology, there is no specific doctrine of God. Like we think in Christianity, we have our doctrine, we have our dogma. We talk about God the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. We talk about the Trinity. God is an afterthought at best in Scientology. There's nothing particular that they subscribe to or that you are required to believe about God to be a part of Scientology. So in that sense, it's unique as far as a religion. There's a quote that kind of gives you an idea of where we'll go. Man's best evidence of God is the God he finds within himself. So that's very circular. If you want to know who God is, just look deep within yourself. Look inside and you'll see God in there. Very dangerous philosophically to think where I'm going to find God is somehow in myself. But that's kind of what they do. Now when they talk about God, it's really not God. A supreme being seems to be the language that they use. A quote from the books, The Scientology Religion on Doctrine and Practice, says the mission of Scientology is to help the individual become aware of himself as an immortal being and to help himself achieve and attain the basic truths with regard to himself, his relationship to others, and the supreme being. It seems like there's a lot of self in this kind of mission of Scientology. So Scientology is not an outward focused, find meaning from a God larger, bigger, outside of yourself. It's a very inward focused religion. And so because it has no doctrine, you don't have to accept anything about God to be a part of Scientology. In fact, we'll talk about the 8 dynamics later. The last of the 8 dynamics is where they finally get around to talking about God. And when I say God, at least acknowledging God, and again, it's more supreme being kind of an idea. They don't define who God is or who you have to believe in to be God or what God does in any way. So if I was going to say what the ultimate concern is, this is probably as close as you can come, and that him or herself would really be the ultimate concern of Scientology. Very inward focus, very self-centered focus. And again, if I'm going to see in Hubbard's life and how the experiences he had, that does kind of mark the kind of life he had and the life that he lived. So when we talk about sacred writings, it's kind of like ultimate concern or God. There's not a Bible of Scientology. Like this is, most of the religions, there have been 1, 2, maybe 3 books, that these are the things. This is the book, this is the document that contains the doctrine, the basics of the religion. And in Scientology, sacred writings are all of his books. And in fact, you can buy a set. This is not all of his books, by the way. He was a prolific author. You can see here his Dianetics, but these are some of his books. They encourage people who become part of Scientology to buy what is his books. And you can get, not all of them, but a volume that includes most of these. I think there's only 2 of these that aren't in that volume. For the low, low price of $4,000. It's like 20 books there. So we'll say 20 into 4,000, $200 a book, right? Now, you could probably go on Amazon and buy any of those books much cheaper. But the adherents to Scientology, there's something about and then this is what they do. They say, there is such a demand for these books that we encourage you not only to buy these books for yourself, the set of books, but to buy an extra set or two and gift them to your local library so they'll be available for people who can't afford it. We go back to why is it mostly celebrities that are Scientologists? It ain't cheap to be a Scientologist. So in these books, in these writings, some more religious, and I'm using that word very loosely, some just outright fiction books. In these different writings are the philosophies that are built into the religion of Scientology. Another little quirk they do is they want to encourage you when you buy this set that the books are often updated. And when the updated version comes out, guess what they want you to do?
Why? You would.
You need the latest and greatest. Now he's been dead for a couple decades now, but whatever. I don't know what they had. So just crazy the amount of things that happen there. Beyond kind of this core of books, he authored a number of more technical papers. They're not really books, but they're what we call essays, theses, treatises, I don't know. And so those are also considered what you would want to study. In addition to books, he has made some films. Some films were made on his, some he made, some are based. Probably the most recent that I've ever heard of is Battlefield Earth, which is a fiction book. John Travolta, one of his cronies, this was a big budget flick that they put out. Obviously a big star, lots of special effects, hoping kind of be a hook that people would watch this movie and want to know more about Scientology. But there are also some of his books have been kind of filmized in various ways and orientations and this is just 8. I wrote down how many. I didn't write down how many books, actually how many films he has out there, but so this is not, these are considered authoritative. You can learn about that from this. Yes, sir.
But what are these? I mean, those two famous people you showed us. I mean, what are they seeing in that? What grabs them about this? There's no commitment. Probably there's no. I mean, what is it?
I don't know.
It's kind of if I'm an outsider for the thing, but I don't see anything in there that interests me. Just as my own personal. But I'm just wondering what grabs these.
I don't know because I don't have any conversations or records with Tom Cruise or John Travolta saying there might be, but I've not listened to them. And I really don't know. It's a good question to figure out what it is about this. The closest I can come, and here's what he tries to do. He tries to say what he's developed is a precise technology to apply his scientific discoveries so that you can become the truest, fullest version of you can be. So he promotes what he does as science. Now, for those of you who are in science, science has certain rules and things that, scientific method at the very least, there's nothing about this that's scientific. When we get to the next section of worldview and we start talking about some of this stuff, this would be really hard to prove scientifically, but it's the basis for what he does. And so to answer your question, no, I really honestly, it does, a lot of people, we think in Christianity, we often say sometimes at people's lowest points, they realize there's a need for someone greater than them to save them, to call out to that supreme being, higher power, God. And it's an opportunity. Many of us have probably had relationships with people who they came to faith at a very difficult time in their life because we were there and able to encourage them and point them to, God cares and he's here and he'll see you through it. This is not that kind of thing. At the lowest point in your life, I need $4,000 for the books, and we'll see later the bridge. I forget what it's called. The bridge they have It's a huge document that's on every Scientology church. That's the whole process you go through to be fully clear. That's their word, to be clear. So I don't know.
Like you were saying in the beginning, like, no, there's no spiritual truth outside of yourself to like adhere to try to reach, to try
It's all
to.
about me.
So it doesn't have anything to offer.
No,
Like,
but-
like,
They don't get
Maybe
on
that's
that.
it.
It's all about me.
If there's a bunch of people whose whole life is built on their popularity and people, whatever, have we noticed that celebrities get a big head?
Yes.
Like, you're a movie star and suddenly you're brilliant about everything. Like, no, we don't need your opinion on that. We just need you to act in the next movie and hug. But, maybe it just feeds that ego because it is very self-centered.
Yeah, those are real scientific giants, all those pictures
Yeah.
of hers.
So there we go. Last part, 3,000, over 3,000 recorded lectures. So a ton of books, lots of films, 3,000 recorded lectures form the basis of the teaching of Scientology. This word sacred is doing some heavy lifting
Yes.
in this idea. We've said sacred writings in the sense that Scientologists do revere his thoughts and his ideas as recorded in these ways, but sacred in a typical sense that we, sacred set apart, not so much.
You get to buy those too.
Yeah, I think everything's money with them.
I would think, yeah, probably. I don't know the internet now, you can probably audible it or who knows. So worldview, here's where it gets fun. Have you heard of a thetan? Oh, this is good. All right, buckle up, buttercups. This is some crazy stuff.
Uh-oh.
So, human beings have three parts: spirit, mind, and body. Now, so far, you've probably heard that, something similar to that in church world, body, soul, and spirit.
Mhm.
But for Scientologists, the person's true inner self or theta being is the thetan, Thetan. Okay? He doesn't like the word spirit for thetan, but he kind of uses it in that sense. He likes to stick with this word. I said spirit, mind, and body. He would say body, mind, and thetan. Or actually not soul. Hubbard stated that the thetan is the person. You are you in a body. So we might relate to that, right? We would say as Christians that the body is that earthly container that after our death, we have a soul that goes to be with Christ if we're a believer, or we have a soul that's separated from Christ if we haven't believed. So we get that. But it gets better. The thetan resides in your skull, just for the record. But as you advance, you can cast the thetan outside of your body for brief periods of time. And by even being close contact, you can see things through through whatever that process is of casting it off that otherwise you wouldn't know. Now, here's where we get Eastern religious influence coming here. Thetans have existed for trillions of years, not millions, not billions, trillions, according to him. In their original form, they were simply energy. They were separate from the physical universe. So you can see kind of a spiritual dimension versus a physical dimension. Physical dimension he calls the MEST universe. And MEST is matter, energy, space, and time. Those things we might understand, even scientifically, kind of have an idea for what these things are. So the Thetans existed outside the MEST, the physical universe. But something happened along the way, and having interacted somehow with the MEST universe, they became deluded and thought that they could express actions inside the MEST universe. And in trying to do that, the Thetans became trapped in physical bodies in the universe. So these trillion-year-old spiritual light energy, whatever you call them, things became trapped in physical bodies. It was a mistake. They weren't supposed to be. And over time, they forgot their original form. And so, there you go. So this in your body, you have the genetic code, the evolutionary, as he would say, line of stuff that you pass on, and you have your consciousness, this thetan that can separate from the body or the mind, and the real you is the thetan. And what happens is that thetan has inhabited lots of bodies over lots of years. When the body dies and decays, the thetan doesn't stay, it goes and finds another body to latch onto. So Eastern religion, right? Kind of a reincarnation idea, past lives, but not necessarily in the sense of karma, where the next life is better or worse depending on the last life. So it doesn't work that way. It's not karma reincarnation. It's just the body dies, the genetic material, the physical material, the carbon compounds rot, and the thetan latches onto another carbon compound and starts another life. But what's happened is in all these lives, bad things have happened to the bodies the thetan has been in. And those bad things have latched on to the thetan, and he carries those things from body to body. Isn't this exciting?
Yes.
Who wants to be a Scientologist? Okay, he carries those things from body to body. And those things in Scientology are called engrams. They're the negative experiences and memories that are attached to the thetan that is the real you that causes you to be messed up. And Scientology has found ways to identify the thetan and to help the thetan in you shed these engrams, these negative memories and experiences that are holding you back.
So you can become clear.
So you can become clear.
Yeah, I read this when I was a teen,
There you go.
and I went back to science fiction. But
It sounds
yeah,
pretty.
to be clear was the main.
To be clear is the goal.
Right.
That's where you're going.
That was
To be clear means you've been rid of all the engrams. Now, what it doesn't say is after in your life, the thetan is clear of all the engrams, what happens when your physical body dies? If any, engrams from your death, be it horrible or whatnot, attached to the thetan, he has to start all over again. I guess, when he goes to the next person, we got all that. I don't know, but that's it. So underneath all of this, a key concept for Scientology is survival. That now this is not surprising, we like to survive. We want to live, we want to survive. And this is where what they call the 8 dynamics come into play. The 8 dynamics are represented by a cross, which looks like a Christian cross, but with kind of a couple of diagonal lines added to make 8 points. This is the symbol of the 8 dynamics. And these are the levels of survival. So now we're going to go into psychology, Maslow's hierarchy of needs almost, where, and not exactly the same, but this is, so what's happening in you is this thetan is there. He's got all of these negative engrams attached, and all the thetan wants to do is survive, but it's not easy because he's got all these engrams. And so they identify these 8 levels of survival, these 8 dynamics of survival, the first being the individual. Like the thetan wants the body he's in not to die, which makes sense. The next level is the idea of procreation and family. So the body he's in, now we're talking extended family, any offspring that the thetan has. I don't know how thetans can have offspring, because it would seem to me in the teaching, any offspring you have is a totally different thetan that's been around trillions of years and has their own baggage. But nonetheless, that's what's going on. From there, we move into groups, community, society, the survival of these things. If you're in a community, if you're in a society, if you're in a country, we might say. From there, we go a little bigger to the species, humanity itself. And so as the thetan sheds engrams, the idea is his view of what is important gets bigger. So initially with all the engrams, he's just trying to make it through the day. But then when he's made it through the day, he's ready to care about a family. If he has a family, he's got some engram shit. So that's the idea. He's surviving at the level he's capable of based upon what's going on. From there we go, just life in general, like all living things. So from the species, humanity as a whole, to life on this planet, biology, flora, fauna, all that sort of thing, to the physical universe. So as you're getting clearer, you're seeing things clearer, you have a bigger picture of everything, to spiritual realms. This would be maybe the idea as a thetan being a quasi-spirit, recognizing other spirits in the universe, to finally the last level, the acknowledgement and interaction with a supreme being that is not named, has no qualities or characteristics in any way defined by Scientology, is just there. It's almost like, we should have a God because everybody believes in God. Did I write that quote? Did I get that quote? I didn't write anything. Did I type that? What did you say? Nope, I did not. So the 8 dynamics are there. And so it's a gradually expanded view of life, the universe, and everything. I don't understand this. I've read it 50 times in different explanations. This makes no sense to me. It doesn't seem consistent to me. If what we talked about with thetans and that spirit light that have been around for trillions of years, we get to this, these things don't make sense to me. Does it make sense that you can tell me if you think you get it? Because I don't get it.
No.
It makes sense to me.
How so? Help me understand what you think, what you
For
see.
example, survival, you worry about something. And it's, you wanna survive in life. So that is the first one, is then with yourself. And you say, is this important for myself? And then you have a little bit bigger picture from how does it relate to the survival of my family, and that's how you can go farther in the community.
Yeah, I get that. I get the idea that these are broader views of concern, realms of concern for my survival.
Yeah.
That if somebody's pointing a gun at me, I'm not thinking about the species.
No,
I'm thinking about how am I going to survive the next 5 minutes,
yes.
or am I going to survive?
No, but that was a cool. This was a woman and she had some physical whatever. And she learns from see yourself in a bigger picture. It's look as if you go look from a cloud down to you, how important is this pain or whatever. I think that's my pain. And then you can relativate the concept.
And that would tie into the idea that you could project your thetan out when you're advanced. You can project the thetan outside of your body to get a better perspective, maybe too. So their worldview is really focused again on the inner self, on this thetan that's really you, even though it's not just you, it's a whole bunch of people throughout history. I haven't, the idea of reincarnation is you're the same entity over and over again, right? And it seems to be that is sort of the case, but if you're a Scientologist, by the way, if it only started in the 1950s, how many years of history did those thetans have to get really messed up?
Yeah.
Nobody has a good thetan when it starts. Everybody's a mess, which is kind of true when we think about it, but nonetheless. So that's their worldview. That's kind of the background that he paints in these books of who you are and how you need to advance in your understanding and your need for survival. How do you do that? Ritual acts. There's really one, and it's called auditing. Now, nobody likes an audit, right?
Lines right across what's word?
Auditing, like an IRS audit.
Tax on it.
Yeah.
But this is not an IRS audit. This has nothing to, well, it does a lot to do with your finances because it costs money.
Yeah.
But auditing for them is not what we think of. I'm gonna look at the books and see. Auditing uses a machine that is called the e-meter. And I hope you can see this. There's like these two, they're like Coke cans, although they're probably more advanced, that you hold in each hand. And a trained auditor begins to have a discussion with you, asking you questions, supposed to make a safe environment where you can discuss freely, and begins to ask questions. And on the e-meter, what happens is it sends a minor charge of electricity from one of the cans to the other, and the e-meter registers in the conversation anything. Oh, it's called, lie detector, where they strap you up and they monitor your blood pressure, your heart rate, all that, and they're looking for variations to say, ooh, that might be a lie. There's some things going on physiologically that tell us you might be lying. Obviously it's not that advanced. It's two Coke cans you're holding in each. It's very simple. But supposedly they use these dials, they tune it in just right for the initial conversation until they can use this e-meter to identify the engrams. So in the conversation that we're having, we're talking something about the interaction, the question I ask, the answer you give, the needle or whatever jumps. I'm like, ooh, there's an engram. So we got to get that engram that's attached to your thetan. That's a negative memory experience that's holding you back. And this is the tool they use to do that. When they use this, as Todd already said, the goal is to be clear, which means you're an optimal individual. You're clear to false information, memories of traumatic experiences that prevent you from adapting to the world around you in a natural and appropriate fashion. Now, we understand that trauma can affect how you adapt to the world around you. The whole bunch of psychological fields that deal, Wellspring has a whole trauma arm or wing of their counseling ministry, their Christian counseling ministry, because, they deal with children who've been in abusive homes. That's trauma. Does that stick with you? Does that affect?
PTSD.
That would be another kind of way we talk about it. Think about war. I think mostly like war veterans a lot with PTSD.
Now they're bringing it down to
Right.
every kind of trauma.
Yeah, you get in a car wreck and you have PTSD.
Right.
Somebody yells at you and you have PTSD. You're triggered. All these words that we hear.
Right.
I understand that those things are real. And Denise has got a degree in psychology and is very good at she's not a psychologist. She doesn't have a shingle, although she's great at talking to people and helping them kind of process things. I've given her 35 years of practice, so that's really her skills greatly. But nonetheless, while this sounds quasi-psychological, Scientology rejects any mental health, psychology, psychologist, psychiatry out of hand. It is fraudulent, it is wrong, it is doing more harm than good. But this is just what you need, okay? I'm overstating, I'm emphasizing this to the point of absurdity, but there you go. So,
And there's a cost to each session.
hundreds of dollars
Absolutely.
to each session. Depends on the skill of your auditor, how long they've been doing it, what their fees are. Sessions can last from 2 to 4 hours. Because it's supposed to be a safe environment that just, it probably takes a while to get to the good stuff. And it takes, because your thetan has all these engrams, it's not just one session and you're good. It's a lengthy process. Now, the goal of a Scientologist just starting out who is being audited is that they will then become someone who will be an auditor, who can audit others. So this is part of the process that while being audited and while becoming more clear, that ultimately you will come to know how this e-meter works and how the process works from going through it so that then you can audit others. I don't know if this is certainly not a seal of approval from the AMA or American Psychological Association or anything like that. But there are, within Scientology, criteria that they want you to meet to be able to audit people. And so these auditing process is meant to help you. They look at your mind kind of as two. Did I talk about the reactive mind and where's the other one? The conscious mind and the reactive mind? Did I talk about that? Okay, so they think you have a conscious mind, as in that which makes you alive. Like your mind has a consciousness that makes you breathe and your heart beat, and it has to have some physiological function so that the body you're in works. But actually they call it your analytical mind that controls your consciousness. The reactive mind is the mind that absorbs and responds to all the painful experiences in your life. And so what auditing does is try to find through this meter, your reactive mind stores mental images of the trauma, of the bad stuff, the engrams, and in the auditing process, they identify where those are, and they try to, I guess you say, clear your reactive mind of those things so that your mind isn't as well reactive. And we can see that kind of makes sense, right? No, not really. Makes sense. I mean,
Let's just say this.
So most possible.
so I mean, the best example I can think of is a child that's been, or how about a pet? Let's not talk children. Have you ever gotten a pet that was in an abusive home, and every time you move your hand, they cower because their experience is if there's a hand moving, it's to hit them, it's to hit them, and so it takes a long time to teach that pet that hand is going to be loving, it's going to be gentle, it's going to pet, it's going to give a treat. Because there's all this, and so I get that. What I don't get is the kind of, at the very least, non-scientific way. I mean, I think they said 1.5 volts, is used in this, which it's like put a 9 volt, no, not even that. Put a 9 volt battery on your tongue, you feel a little, not going to be a big deal. So it's not even that. It's like a AAA battery, maybe, not much, but how that does it. It's pretty wild. But this is what they do. This is how you're going to go. Now the next part they call the bridge to total freedom. So if you go to a Scientology center, this poster, this is the bottom, this is the top. For some reason, always in red, and usually a large poster size thingy bob is on the wall somewhere in a Scientology center. This is the process that you go through to become clear. You can see class 12, auditor class 12. So it actually starts at the bottom. So your introduction is over here. First thing you have to do is go up the right-hand column. And I know you can't read it, but every one of these is a course with a cost. Every one of them, with books that go with it, with materials, with an instructor, with a I don't know what you call it, a matriculation fee or tuition that you have to pay. Every one of these. So what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oops. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 34. If they're about 30, so 60 plus. So you go up this side first. You can see, where is it? Here's clear. You're like a fourth of the way through, and the big word clear shows up. And it's determined by your CS, which is the person doing the auditing of you. So you have a course for each of these that you're paying for and buying materials for. You have an auditor that's coming in that you're paying for to help you as you're going through the course, and you're trying to move up each of these levels. And when you get to this part, this is they call it processing. So you come in with all that engrams on your feet. Hate it when that happens. And you got to go through 30 plus of these courses and auditing sessions to be processed. And then you go back here and you start learning how to become an auditor for others with another 30 plus courses and whatnot. Who wants to sign up? $4,000 for the book, several $1,000s.
Is it 30 times 5?
So no, the columns are the name of where you are, the subject audited, the prerequisites, the class of
Okay,
the auditor, where obtained, and ability gained. So this is one
okay,
with kind of, so, like up here, if you could see it, which I know you can't, because I can barely see it this close, there's a lot of these that say confidential. And this is, the other thing that comes out in the auditing process. It's all recorded. So you are there paying hundreds of dollars with an auditor, and you are telling your deepest, darkest secrets to someone that's recorded and kept. And then when you decide, this makes no sense, I don't want to do it anymore, guess what they got on you?
Yep, you did.
And so they have a whole process. If you try to leave Scientology, they start releasing information about you. Because typically when people leave Scientology, they don't leave happy. They leave with an axe to grind. They've come to the point where they realize, I've just been bilked for money and this has happened, it's not helping me. They've taken advantage of me. And so to discredit former Scientologists who leave, they've got this plethora of information that they begin leaking so that when you, now, of course, we go back to the first slide. A long time ago and went far, far away. Leah Remini on her show talked a lot about all the things that she went through, and she had other people, guests that had left Scientology, and all the things that they went through. Where people, the church, so that's what it's called, came after them to discredit them. Particularly the more notable, the more notoriety, the more influence you have, the harder they go. Before you can say anything, to let the press know all your deepest, darkest secrets. So you're discredited before you can make a claim or a negative viewpoint of Scientology.
Do you know you're being recorded?
I would,
Because you said when they were audited, it was a safe place.
it's safe, it's calm, you're supposed to be free, but
But if they're recording
theoretically, aren't you supposed to tell people you're being recorded?
Right.
And so that is a good question. Legally, if they get around
If they know
to
you're
things,
being recorded, then they wouldn't be free to, at least most people are not.
but
free
it,
to say
my
what
point is,
they're
by the
doing.
time you're getting there, you've bought in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
You are there because you've got some negative memories, you've got some trauma that you want to get rid of.
You go along the game at that point.
And,
You're sunk.
you trust these people. You expect that they're for your good, they're helping you. So it's probably a little of that too. So yeah, it's this bridge, we call it again. Bridge to true freedom, bridge to real life. Bridge to total freedom, there it is a very elaborate process. As you can see, 60 something whatevers. Let's say you did one a month, that's 5 years. Assuming you could afford one a month. I think this is basically designed to keep you in. There's always something else. There's always a next step. There's always another thing you need to do. There's always another audit. There's always another thetan, there's always another engram. There's always a clearer option, clearer future for you. You can read a lot about the scam that seems to be Scientology. We're saying this under world religions, but it was rejected as a nonprofit organization, 501c3 religious organization. It has not received any of that stamp from good old Uncle Sam as far as saying it meets those criteria like most churches do and are. So there have been lots of red flags about Scientology, but when you have a lineup of celebrities who everybody wants to be like, right? Who doesn't want to be rich and famous?
I remember when Tom Cruise's wife, were getting a divorce and they had children, and she wanted to pull the children completely out and away from it. It got ugly.
Yeah.
They circle the wagons. They try, if you're gonna leave, they don't want you to take your spouse or your family. They threaten people that try to leave with lots of that sort of thing. It's quite a thing. It's quite a racket. That's all I have to say about that. Moral code is another one we usually do. There's really no moral code. There's no, the writings are not about how to live a moral life, what's right and wrong. It's about, you're messed up. You've got these engrams, your past lives need to be cleared. So moral code doesn't even apply. I think they want you to be moral people. I don't think they want you to go, murder and do whatever, but as far as here are the commandments, when you don't have a God, when you don't have a dogma of who God is and what he expects of you, and it's really all about yourself, anything can and will go. Has anybody had any interactions with Scientologists? Just curious. No?
I think it's the people I worked with, they said, or she said, he was a Scientologist.
I know they've owned a lot of property in Tampa, I believe. They have a big area there.
Most of their holdings,
St. Pete.
most of their holdings are out west. No, I read the book in as a teenager. There's just, I reached the point where you're at, just gone. And went back to science fiction. It was just a book I read. But no, I remember the goal was to be clear.
Yeah.
And get rid of your engrams. But it just, after a while, it just keeps falling further into that out. That's a good word for it.
I think we can see quasi-Christian parallels, clear, forgiven, engram sin. We can see that most of these religions, we can probably sort of draw, maybe not straight lines, but crooked lines between Christianity, the one true God, faith in Jesus, a savior, to these. But this is the hardest because it really, it's not like Jehovah's Witness we did last, that they use the Bible, even though they translate it differently. And they talk about Jesus and they talk about his death and they talk about morality. It's really, it's less religion and more, it's not quite philosophy like Buddhism, but more hokey science, quasi-science.
Is this Christian Science Society? Is that Scientology?
No, that's different entirely.
Okay.
Christian Science Reading Room. Mary Baker Eddy is the
Okay.
founder. Do we need to do Christian Scientist next? Or I was gonna do Adventism, Seventh-day Adventist. Maybe somebody asked about the Christian Scientist. I think, Joel, you sent me an email saying, what about I was thinking about Catholicism to do that, but then Joel said, what about even Protestantism? Because there's a lot of differences. There's some core things we hold.
That one I'd be interested in.
So I do you still have that book?
It's in North Carolina.
Of course,
But I may be able to bring it back when we go to Christmas time. If I can remember.
because it probably will be after Christmas. So
And it's old, but
Pastor,
at least it yeah. I'll see if I can find it.
is that Miss Julianne? Did you have something to say?
I was raised in Christian Science.
Oh, were you?
There was a Christian Science practitioner.
Interesting. So we'll have to get your testimony, your firsthand account when we do that one.
Yeah, I have something very interesting about what I realized anyway. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
I like to know that. That's good to know.
And I'm going back to you.
Okay, thank you, Julianne. So that's the plan. We'll meet next week, which is the 11th. The week after that is the 18th. My plan is to meet, but the 18th is our big Christmas Wednesday night dinner. And if that gets long, we might need to be flexible. Because the Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner, typically we have more people show up. It's a fancier dinner. They do a lot of decorating. And so I'm planning to do something that week. But just if you could be flexible with me, I'd appreciate it. The next 2 Wednesdays are December 25th and January 1st. We will not meet either of those Wednesdays. 25th is Christmas. Hopefully you'll be busy with family and friends. And the 1st, I will be out of town celebrating my anniversary. So won't be here. Plus it's a holiday. Happy New Year. Eat some black eyed peas.
My
Have a
dad
good day.
always said,
Got to. So that's the plan. Even though the bullets or the newsletter said no class this month, we are planning to meet the next 2 weeks.
Next week for sure.
yeah.
Next week for sure, hopefully the 18th, and then we'll take the Christmas and New Year days off. Thanks, Ralph, for joining us. You and your wife down for just a week or so, enjoying the hot weather.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. For me, I'm not complaining. I
He
love it.
said he went out on the boat today.
Went on
And
a-
it was just wind and that.
How bad was it?
It was bad.
Did you fish or just?
Yeah, we fished.
Did you
but
catch anything?
I caught a lot of fish, lots of all kinds, 2 keepers, and second.
So a lot of times, the best fishing days I've had have been the worst weather.
Yeah, well, that was in my mind when I'm like, you know, it's a good point of being a good day. to fish.
When it's flat calm and no current and no
Well, it's
waves.
just,
Yeah. I mean, you know, dolphin, that's probably pretty perfect for it. I don't like to cruise. Some of those people go dolphin fishing for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. That is not my kind.
No.
I read this morning, there was a small craft advisory. I was trying to go out of here, out of Sailor's Choice. They won't tell. But I called Brother Mary's and said they were leaving at my Thursday.
Yeah, they're early. So on the party boat?
Yeah, it was hard. A couple of, they had pulled up a nice group of, couple of nice fish came up.
Oh, good. I'm glad it was a good day in
I
spite of
I
it.
moved to the right side of the boat hoping.
Yeah, that worked for Peter, right? All right. Well, thanks for coming. Let me pray and then we'll call it a day. Yeah. Father in heaven, we thank you for the love that you've demonstrated through the gift of Jesus. Lord, I thank you that when you saw the brokenness in this world and in our lives, that you didn't leave us to figure it out on our own, but that you acted in history through your Son. That he bore on the cross the curse of sin and the law, so that we might receive forgiveness and grace and salvation. Thank you for that rescue mission that you ran. Thank you for the hope that we have in you. Thank you for the promise of eternity and the promise that we can have even an abundant life here. In spite of difficulty, Father, you promise to be with us, to never leave us or forsake us. May we, especially as we look at these other religious faiths, never take for granted our God, who you are, and what you have done. We pray this in Jesus' name.